We're going to get started in just a minute. We do have a few more students logging on as I speak. While we're waiting, I hope you've grabbed a pen or pencil, calculator, some paper, um, maybe even a drink of water. And we do have to keep everybody muted during this webinar. We have quite a few students on tonight. So you will be able to chat in questions. I have one of my colleagues, Elliot, on with me. We will get to as many questions as we can, but we can't promise we'll get to every question tonight. When we teach our regular classes, we don't have as many students on, so we can answer all the questions tonight. We literally have hundreds of students on, so we won't get to every single question, but you will learn a ton tonight. We're going to go through a lot of practice questions, go over a lot of strategies, techniques, so will definitely be worth your time. So just sit tight for another minute, and then we'll jump right in. Okay, we're going to go ahead and get started. We are going to be talking about ACT and SAT ratio questions tonight. The good news about the SAT and ACT, there is a lot of overlap between the two exams. So when you prepare for one exam, you're going to be getting yourself ready for both. So we're going to talk about some questions tonight that could really show up on either exam. Then we're also going to do some ACT and SAT English and grammar questions. Again, there's a lot of overlap. Some of the questions you'll notice is in the ACT, are in the ACT format, and some will be in the SAT format. So let's jump right in. Just a little bit about myself, everyone. You can see some of my background there. What's important to me that all of you know is that I spend all day, every day, working with students, working with teachers, working in schools. I know what's realistic as far as how much work that everyone can put in. I know how busy students are. So the prep that we do is, the goal is to help students learn as much as possible in as short a time as possible, and to do so as efficiently as possible. So, and you're going to see that tonight as we go through a bunch of questions, where in just 2 minutes you can pick up a strategy that will help you raise your SAT score 10 or 20 points, or your ACT score 1 or 2 points. Okay, and just a little bit, just for as a fun slide, there's my twin 5-year-olds. So if I'm not helping students get ready for the SAT and ACT, I'm usually spending time with those two knuckleheads. And no, I did not start them on SAT or ACT prep yet. So the goal of this presentation is very simple. I want to teach you 2 important SAT, ACT strategies, at least 2. And I want to take some of the mystery out of the whole getting into college process. I think it's a shame that many students and parents overcomplicate this process. We can simplify it by saying, if you do as many practice questions as possible and do as much repetition as you can, you will be very well prepared for these exams, you will score well, and you will get into a number of colleges. Okay, and even get some financial aid and scholarship money as well. So again, I want to take some of the mystery out and simplify the process. So let's get started. So, and you see I already wrote on this slide, there's a reality that the SAT and the ACT, these are not IQ tests. A lot of students have been led to believe that these are tests that you cannot prepare for, and it's simply not true. You can prepare for these exams. In fact, you can do a lot to improve your score. Again, it's a matter of time and practice. So you can raise your score. That's one thing I love about my job, is when students work hard and I work with those students, students see results. They improve their scores. So you heard me allude to this before, but I want to say it again. And I think this is such an important piece of information. On the SAT, each additional question that you get correct equals 10 additional points on your score. On the ACT, each additional question you get correct equals 1 additional point. This is great news, guys. This means that just 5 questions, you can make a significant difference on your SAT or ACT score. Okay? So here's a very typical, very common ACT SAT ratio question. I'll read it out loud as you guys read it to yourselves. So Joe can buy a pair of canvas shoes for $7 or a pair of leather shoes for $35. At these prices, what is the ratio of the cost of 6 pairs of canvas shoes to the cost of 3 pairs of leather shoes? Okay, as soon as you read this question, as soon as you see the word ratio, I want you to say to yourself, ratios can always be rewritten as fractions. Okay? Ratios can always be put into a fraction form. Okay? And once I think of that, it definitely makes this question simpler because I want to put the cost of 6 pairs of canvas shoes on top of my fraction and the cost of 3 pair of leather shoes on the bottom. So let's do that here. You can buy a pair of canvas shoes for $7. So 7. And they're saying what's the ratio of the cost of 6 pair? And then on the bottom, we can buy a pair of canvas shoes for $35. And we're going to buy 3 of them. Now, of course, on the SAT and ACT, you can use a calculator. So at this point, you can just put this into your calculator. You can also easily divide both 7 and 35 by 7. That makes 1 and 5. And then divide both 6 and 3 by 3, and that makes 2 and 1. So then what we're left with is simply 2 over 5. That is the correct answer to this question. I think, unfortunately, I don't think this is a hard math question for most students, but I think students get lost in the wordiness of this. So I know I recently took the SAT and ACT. They can be pretty intimidating experiences, and sometimes you read so many words, you just get lost in the words. So if you can not focus on all the words and just start by saying, well, a ratio is a fraction, and if I just set up the top and the bottom, that's all I really need to do to answer this question correctly. So I bet that question seemed pretty easy to some of you. I hope that question seems very gettable to most of you. And that's a very standard question. That's something you're going to encounter over and over again on the SAT and ACT. Okay, so it's more fun for you guys if I give you a chance to try a question first. So I'm going to give everybody a minute to try this question. Okay, and then I'm going to open up a poll so everybody can answer the question and see if they were right. Even if you're not sure, I'd like you to put in a guess. So go ahead and try this question for a minute, and then we'll go over it together. Another 20 seconds. Okay, let me go ahead and open up the poll. If you have an answer, great, put it down. And if you're not sure, I'd like you to take your best guess. Okay, over half of you have voted already. Please put in an answer. Next couple of seconds. Okay, 90% of you have voted, and a lot of you got this question right, so nice job. I'll go over it quickly for everybody. Was a little tricky for some people. So if the ratio of m to n is 7 to 6, well, as soon as I read that, I'm going to turn it into a fraction. I'm going to write 7 over 6. Which of the following could be true? You could put one simple way to answer the question is you could put 7 over 6 into your calculator is going to spit out something like 1.16. And then you could just sit there and try the answer choices and wait for a choice that gives you 1.16. So for example, if you tried choice A, 8 over 7, 8 over 7 would be close, but it would not be the same. Now they tried to fool some students. When I say that, I mean the makers of the SAT or the makers of the ACT. They'll try a trick like this to catch people's attention, but that's not the exact same ratio. You go through each one, and when you got to choice E, 7 over 3 over 2, if you plug that into a calculator, it's going to give you exactly the same as 7 over 6, something like 1.16. So choice E is correct. Okay. Now, a backup way to get that question would be to look at 7 over 6 and know that the way to create an equivalent fraction is to divide the top and bottom by the same number. So if you divide both the top and the bottom by 3, 7 divided by 3 is 7 over 3, and 6 divided by 3 is 2. Um, Guys, it's a shame because a lot of students looked at choice E and immediately crossed it out because it looked like a weird choice. There was a fraction in the answer choice. And that's exactly what the SAT and the ACT is hoping that you will think and sort of disregard that answer. So we simply turned into a fraction, got a decimal, and looked for which answer choice gave us that same decimal. Or just realized we divided the top and the bottom by the same number. Okay, let's move on to example number 3. And by the way, if I go too quickly through any of these questions, remember that you will get a recording of this class. You can re-watch the recording a second time to go back to a question that you still need to understand completely. Okay, let's do the same thing. Let me give you a minute to try this question, and then we will have a poll and go over it. And the word there is cast, everyone. Cast is cut off. So what was the number of votes cast for Harris? Okay, I'm going to launch this poll. I know I didn't give you guys much time, but I do want to get through a lot of questions. Um, and of course, you can always retry this question again tomorrow. So just gave everyone a few extra seconds to finish. Let me open up this poll. Please put an answer even if you're not sure. Okay, over 50% have voted. A few more votes. Okay. Oh, a few more votes. I want to get up to 90%. We're at 87% of you have voted so far. All right, over 90%. And 55% of you got this question correct. It was C. So nice job to those of you who got it, but this was a challenging question. A lot of people got it wrong. So let me go over it quickly. You see a total of 36,000 votes. Okay. You see a ratio of 5 to 4. You guys know this. You probably learned it for the first time in 7th or 8th grade, or maybe even earlier. You can write that as 5x and 4x, right? So in addition to thinking of ratios as fractions, you can also think of ratios as you just put an x or an n after each number. And we know that if you add 5x and 4x, it's got to equal 36,000, right? Because that's the total number of votes. Okay, so 5x plus 4x equals 36,000. You guys know the next couple of steps. 9x equals 36,000. Divide by 9. And you get x equals 4,000. Now it's more of a reading question than a math question. What are they asking you for? They're asking you for the number of votes cast for Harris. Okay, so now Harris is the guy who won. He's the 5x. So we just take 4,000 and we multiply it by 5. And that's how we get 20,000, the correct answer. Okay, now, of course, a lot of people put 16,000 because they just read too quickly and they were saying how many votes were for Levine. But choice C is correct. Okay, let's move on. Watch that recording if you need to another day, just to make sure you really have that, because that question is going to be on every SAT and every ACT, a question just like that. Okay, let's do this one quickly together, everyone. In a fruit juice recipe, the ratio by volume of orange juice to pineapple juice to apple juice is 2 to 7 to 5. How many liters of pineapple juice are needed to prepare 3 liters of fruit juice? Okay, so they're asking about 3 liters of fruit juice, which is really the total. It's the whole, and it's made up of 3 parts. So it's very helpful to think of a lot of these questions as part over whole. You've heard those words before, in a fraction or a proportion, part over whole, or a percent. So anyway, we want how many liters of pineapple juice are needed to prepare 3 liters of fruit juice. Well, if we of course, we have to be careful. That's a big part of these exams, is just being careful. And that's good news, guys. What that means is the questions aren't necessarily that hard. People make silly mistakes. Pineapple is the middle number, so that's the 7. So we're definitely going to put the 7 in top. And now we want the whole. So the whole, we need to add 2 and 7 and 5. So that's going to be 14 when you add that up. And then equals. So the question becomes, do we want the 3 to be on the top or to be on the bottom? Go ahead and shout it out to me. I'm just kidding. I can't hear you guys. But I bet a lot of you shouted out the bottom. So the 3 goes on the bottom because it's the total. That's how much fruit juice you want altogether. So now what goes on the top? Well, that's going to be the x, right? You always have to have an unknown in the problem. That's what you're solving for. So then you would just cross multiply and solve. Okay, and very easily you would get x equals 3/2. Which, by the way, makes sense because 7 is half of 14. So it's half of 3, 3/2. So choice A is the correct answer. You would need 3/2, or in other words, 1.5 liters of pineapple juice to prepare these 3 liters of fruit juice. Okay, I love pineapple juice, so it sounds like it would probably be a pretty tasty drink. Okay, if I went too fast, watch that explanation again. Let's move on. Okay, give everybody a minute to try this question. Go for it. Okay, everyone, I'm going to launch this poll. I know some of you probably have not had a chance to finish the question, but give it your best shot. Okay, 65% have voted. Good. More answers are coming in. A few more seconds, everybody. I want to get up to 90%. I want to give everybody a chance to participate. Okay, so 84% of you have voted, and about half of those who voted did get the correct answer, which is C. This is a tricky question, and here's how it would work. They are asking about the total number of swimmers. That's really the key, because they're saying advanced swimmers to novice swimmers is 3 to 5. Okay, but you need to combine those two groups together. And 3 plus 5, so we could call it 3x and 5x, right? Because it's a ratio. Okay, it could be 6 to 10, for example, or doubling. Altogether, that's 8x. That's the total. So each of the following could be the total number of swimmers, except, a lot of people miss that word, except. We need a choice that is not a multiple of 8. So 24 is a multiple of 8, 40 is a multiple of 8, 62 is not, 80 is a multiple, and 96 is a multiple. Only choice C is not a multiple of 8, and that's going to be the answer. That could not be the total number of swimmers, because if there were 62 swimmers, you can't break that up into 5x and 3x. You would have to have, a fraction of a person, which obviously is ridiculous. Okay, but any of the other choices, you could break it up into a group of 5 and 3. So on any question like this, when they ask what could be the total number of swimmers, you just need a multiple when you add the numbers in the ratio together. So if the ratio was 2 to 5, okay, 2 plus 5 is 7, you would then need a multiple of 7. Okay, as simple as that. And I have seen them repeat this question on both ACTs and SATs. Okay, let's move on. Okay, so for any of you who feel like some of the questions were easy, this was from the December ACT, this past December, which I actually sat and took at my local high school. So I love going over these questions because they are the most recent questions that we have access to. If we can do a question like this, we know this is a very realistic example of what we're going to see on the ACT, or again, we could see something like this, just like this on the SAT. So this is number 36 out of 60. So it's on the latter half of the ACT. So it's a harder example. Now I'm sure some of you have already started working on this question as I was talking, but I'm going to do this question with everybody because I think it is intimidating to a lot of students. When a certain map is drawn in the standard XY coordinate plane, now as soon as you read that, guys, you might as well stop and make your axes. Okay, your Y and your X. You don't have to label everything. You don't have time to do that. And then it says one city's coordinates of 5, 6. So I just go over 5, up 6. You're just trying to ballpark it. Because I'm not being perfect, I'm going to label that point. Excuse me. So now I have another city, 9, 12. So over 9, up 12. And again, I just ballparked it. I just estimated it. So I'm going to label it. Okay, and then I'm going to draw the line. So the question says, if one coordinate unit corresponds to 25 miles, which of the following is closest to the straight line distance in miles between these two cities? That's very wordy. You probably need to read that a second or third time. And I think that's where a lot of people get stuck on these exams. They read it once, they don't understand it, and they panic. So read it a second time, but they're asking, what is the distance in miles between these two cities? So here's a strategy or a trick or a tip, whatever you want to call it. Anytime you have a question with a diagonal line with the coordinate plane, you turn the problem into a right triangle problem. You turn the problem into a Pythagorean theorem question. So you draw a line straight down, you draw a line straight across, you make this a right angle. Okay, even though my picture doesn't look perfect, it's close enough. You can do this on any question that has a diagonal line. And then we can figure out the length of this side.
Hey Tom,
Okay, that side, it goes from an x value of 5 to an x value of 9. So that's a length of 4. And then we have a y value of, let me use a different color here for fun. We have a y value of 6 and a y value of 12. So what's the difference between those two? The difference would be 6, right? So this line has to be 6 because it's going from a height of 6 to a height of 12. So then we can get this third side. We do good old a squared, right, plus b squared. Doesn't matter if the 4 comes first or the 6 comes first, equals c squared. So of course you'll have your calculator, 16 plus 36 equals c squared. Okay, so that's 52 equals c squared. And you take the square root of both sides. And when you take the square root, you get c equals, and it's going to be 7 point whatever. Okay, I don't have my calculator with me, but call it 7.2. So 7.2, and now, guys, we are going to use a ratio, proportion, whatever ratios and proportion obviously are very much related. So we can say, well, let me get a different color here. We can say, well, 1 unit would be 25 miles. And we just figured out that the two cities are, say, 7.2. We don't have to be perfect. Units apart, right? I can do U for units, and then how many miles would that be? And you cross multiply and you solve, and you get x equals, okay, it's going to come out to around 180 miles. Okay, and so choice H is the correct answer. Okay, now to those of you where I went a little bit too slow, like that was an easy question for you, I apologize. To those of you that I went too fast, you can go back and watch it again, but this was a challenging question. There was a lot to this question, but the good news is it's a very predictable question. It's a very repetitive question. They just keep using this type of question on the SAT and ACT over and over again. So it's a great one to practice and to make sure you really understand. And again, it was from this December, just 3 months ago, the ACT. So it's a very recent, relevant question. Let's move on. So this will be the biggest challenge I've given you guys so far tonight. Going to give you maybe a minute, minute and a half to try this question. So for those of you who've gotten every question correct so far, this will be a great challenge. Okay, go for it. Sorry, guys. I see that people can't see the question. See if I try. Okay. Elliot, is that better?
no, it's not an Adobe Connect thing. It's a GoToMeeting.
Oh, okay. So I have to stop sharing. Yeah.
Okay, yep, I can see it now.
Okay, sorry about that, guys. So let me start the timer again. Give everybody a minute to try this question. Okay, guys, I'm going to stop you there. That was about a minute and 10 seconds since I restarted. And I know this was a challenging question. Let's see how many of you got it already. Okay, we've had 60, 70% of people have voted. A few more votes. Want everybody to have a chance. A few more votes, even if you're not totally sure. Um, Better to take a guess on the ACT than to leave it blank. Obviously, on the ACT, you should answer every question. Okay, this was a tough question, so I'm not going to wait any longer. 84% of you did vote, and 43% of you had it correct. So this was a challenging question. Let's go through it together. Now, a student made a comment in the chatter. They said, "Isn't the border irrelevant, Jonathan?" Uh, and Jonathan, yes, good pickup on that. The border is irrelevant, everybody. The AC does that. ACT does that from time to time. They put extra information that's not important. They're only talking about the region of grass. Let me make this green. Okay. I live up here in Long Island in the Northeast. We haven't seen green grass in a while, so it's a nice little picture I'm making here. So this is the green area, the grass area that we're talking about. And that's really the only part that's important. They say that the gardener needs bags of fertilizer, and one bag will cover 225 square feet. So of course, that's going to be our ratio. That's going to be our proportion. Okay, so one, and we should do one bag. Okay, equals 225. I'll just put square feet SQ. Now, how do we get the area of that rectangle? Of course, you guys know you multiply. So it's going to be 50 times 24. 50 times 24. Okay, and that's going to give you, oops, it's going to give you 1,200. You have your calculator, of course. So now I can put that number over here, 1,200, and then we're going to put X up here. So it's going to become a ratio proportion question. You're going to cross multiply. Essentially what you're doing is 1,200 divided by 225. And when you do that, just double check that here. And a lot of you guys have done it already, but do it myself. Okay, you get 5.3333. So we have X equals 5.333, and it's a shame because a lot of students put down 5, but it says what is the minimum number of bags that this gardener needs to buy. So if he buys 5 bags, that's not going to cover the whole area. He's got to buy 6 bags. And of course, that's a real world example, right? If you go to Lowe's or Home Depot, you're going to buy a little extra to make sure you can cover the whole area. So the correct answer is D, 6. That was number 20. Notice, guys, that was number 29 on the ACT. So if you got that question correct, that's a good sign because the questions below that on average are going to be easier. Okay, now I had a question here in the chatter. Um, and the question was from Jason. Thanks for the question, Jason. When doing ratio questions, when is it better to use x's and when is it better to use fractions? It's a good question. My answer is you have to be comfortable with both. Um, Technically, you could probably solve any question with either strategy. But when you see a question like the one we had before, like Harris and Levine, 5 to 4, it's just so much easier to put in the x's and solve the equation. But then when you have a question like the one where we had, hey, you have 7/6, what's equal to 7/6? So much easier to just make it into a fraction. So you've got to do enough practice so that you're comfortable with both strategies. Okay, let's move on, guys. And we did a bunch of math. Okay, it's time to do some grammar. I know some of you feel stronger in math, so you kind of been waiting for the English grammar part of this class. So, so let's go ahead and get started. So again, I thought this would be more interesting to you guys if I actually used the very first question from the December ACT. I don't know if any of you took the December ACT, but this was the very first question on the ACT English section. And by the way, the English section does not go in order of difficulty. So I don't want students to think that this would be the easiest one. This would be a regular ACT English. So the strategy on ACT English is very straightforward. You read just enough of the passage, and then you try each choice in the blank. So I'm going to read it out loud as you guys read it to yourselves. I love to snowboard. And like most snowboarders and skiers, I love to be outdoors during winter. However, busy ski resorts can take a toll on the environment. The clear cutting of trees to create new ski runs on mountainsides, though a one-time event, devastate fragile ecosystems and destroy wildlife habitats. And I didn't really need to read that last bit because now I need to go back and focus on question one. So the first thing I want you guys to notice, they're testing you on the use of commas. When do you use a comma? When do you need a comma? One simple way to think about it, a comma is used when there's a natural pause in a sentence. So when you hear a natural pause, that's where you use a comma. But I do want to give you guys a tip, strategy, trick, whatever you want to call it. Students tend to overuse commas. So the ACT often will test you on using less commas. It's often good to get rid of some commas. So A, keeping a comma before and after though is not the correct answer. And a good way to understand that is to exaggerate the pause. That may help you on these questions. So if I exaggerate, it sounds like this. The clear cutting of trees to create new ski runs on mountainsides, though a one-time event, and that's just too many pauses. It's awkward, it's choppy, definitely not A. Now when I get to B, the clear cutting of trees to create new ski runs on mountainsides, though a one-time event, devastate fragile ecosystems. That one sounds okay. C, the clear cutting of trees to create new ski runs on mountainsides, wait, new ski runs on mountainsides, though, a one-time event. Okay, so that sounds awkward because the though goes with the one-time event. No, I'm not loving C. And then D, the clear cutting of trees to create new ski runs on mountainsides, though a one-time event. That would be a run-on sentence. You need some kind of pause. The answer here is B, okay? And it's B because though a one-time event is a phrase. It's a clause. You could take it out of the sentence, and the sentence would sound fine without it. The clear cutting of trees to create new ski runs on mountainsides devastate, and you go right on. So anyway, though a one-time event is a clause, it's a group of words that should be surrounded by commas. That's why B is correct. And guys, that's a really typical ACT English question. You're going to find a lot of questions are around that difficulty level, and a lot of questions test you on the use of commas. Okay, let me give you guys a break from listening to me blab. Give this one a shot. I'm going to give you about 35 seconds. This is the second question from the test. Okay, we'll launch this poll, everybody. Give everyone a chance to participate. And sorry about the A, B, C, D. Um, obviously it's A is F, G is B, C is H, J is D. You shouldn't be putting E in. That's not a choice. Um, okay, most people had a chance to vote. The answer is J, devastates. And that was a tough question. A lot of people were tricked by this one. So let me just explain it quickly. I think it'll make sense to everybody. They say the clear cutting of trees. The clear cutting is the subject. That's a singular subject. Okay. And
Tom, the screen isn't showing up
oh,
yet.
I have to go back.
I think so.
That work, Elliot?
Yep, now it's working. Thanks.
Thank you. Okay, so this is a singular subject. When you have a singular subject, you need a singular verb. And singular verbs have an S at the end. Okay, and whenever somebody's confused, I always say use the simplest example you can think of. Would you say the boy run or the boy runs? Okay, obviously you would say the boy runs. So it's one boy, singular. So when it's one boy, you do use an S on the end of the verb. Here it's clear cutting. That's singular. It's not clear cuttings. So it's got to be devastates. Okay? Devastate would be for a plural, like the boys run. The clear cuttings devastate. So let me just mark P for plural. Have, R would be plural, and have would be plural. Only J is singular. That's the most common type of question they're going to test you on the ACT. So I was really happy when I sat down to take the December ACT because the first two questions were questions that I could be very well prepared for, questions I could expect. I knew they were going to be on the test. I knew they were going to test me. So I'm really just regurgitating the same information and the same concepts. And that's why prepping for these exams will definitely make a difference. Okay, let's move on. Um, so this is, I love going over this concept, everybody, because I find that students are confused by it. So it's called incorrect comparisons. Here's a good example. And I wrote the SAT, but the ACT loves to test students on this as well. So the example is Sam felt extremely confident going into the final round of interviews because his list of credentials was far more impressive than his competitor. The error here is D. So the error is D, and that's what you would mark on the test. And it would have to be his competitor's list or competitor's list of credentials. But right now, it's a poor comparison. It's an incorrect comparison because you're comparing his list of credentials to his competitor, okay, which is obviously a person. So you're comparing a list to a person. That's not a correct comparison. So I've worked with probably 10,000 students over the last 15 years. This concept has confused every one of them at first, but then they've quickly learned it to the point it becomes second nature, it becomes instinct. Okay. Um, so I'm going to give everybody 30 seconds to try this one. Go for it. Okay, that was only 20 seconds, but I'm going to stop you there. These, you have to go fast on these because they don't give you a lot of time, especially on the ACT. Go ahead and put in your answer. Okay, just a few more votes. Okay, 80% of you voted. Most of you had this correct. The answer is D. Okay, and that's because we're comparing the white fur of the polar bear blends in with the winter rat more effectively than the grizzly bear. Okay, now we're comparing fur to a bear. We don't want to do that. We'd have to say the white fur of the polar bear blends in with the winter environment more effectively than the fur of the grizzly bear. And I think what's annoying to me is a lot of students are like, well, yeah, duh, I know that, but you actually have to say that on these tests. So I think some people just get it wrong because they get what the sentence means, but grammatically it's not correct. So this one is D. Um, Elliot, can you see the screen now or
Yeah, I can see it fine.
okay, with the bear? All right. Okay. So not sure why sometimes give us a problem. Okay. Yeah, let me give everyone a chance. Go ahead, 20 seconds, everyone. Give it a shot. Okay. Give everyone a chance to post their answer. Great. Most of you guys have answered up to 80%. A few more. Okay. Um, up to 83%. I'm going to close 85. I'm going to close this poll, guys, and I want so um, over the right answer in a second, but I'll keep you guys in suspense for a minute. It's interesting to me that the wrong answer that was chosen most frequently was choice E, no error. And I want to address that. Students tell me all the time, they say, Tom, I never know when to pick E, no error. Um, I always feel like it's a trick answer. So here's my simple rule. I read the sentence once. If I don't hear an error, I'm going to read the sentence a second time. I'm going to pause at each underlined portion. I'm going to ask myself, could that be a grammatical error? And if I go through the sentence a second time and I don't hear a grammatical error, I'm going to go ahead and put E and I'm going to move on. It should be E one out of every 5 times because they want there to be approximately an equal number of A's, B's, C's, D's, and E's. So that means there should be 4 or 5 no errors per SAT. Most students choose no error. Um, they don't choose it enough at first, and then sometimes they choose it too much. But anyway, it should be 4 or 5 errors. Here, the answer is B. The error is B. And why is the answer B? It's got to be Cleese paintings. And I had a student, I think I saw Jocelyn asked a good question. Uh, how do you know what you're comparing? And that's a great question. The simplest way I can answer it, I'm running out of room here, guys. Sorry. The simplest way I can answer it is you look for the first subject in the sentence. The first subject in the sentence is Whistler's paintings. So now we're comparing this guy's paintings. That's the first subject. So now I have to look for what it's being compared to. It's being compared to this guy. So now we're comparing a painting to a person. That's an incorrect comparison. That's a bad comparison. So B is the error here. So that's what I have to circle. Whistler's paintings, unlike Klee's paintings. Okay, let's take a look at the next one. Oh, this is a nasty question. Okay, this is a fun little challenge, brain teaser. So let me give everybody a minute to try this one. Go for it. Elliot, can you see this question?
Yep.
Okay. Okay. I know this is a tough one. I'm going to open up the poll, and maybe at least you've narrowed it down. So take your best shot. Okay, I'm impressed. Over 83% of you have voted, 85% of you have voted. And of those who have voted, 70% of you were correct. The answer is B. And maybe what a lot of you guys did was process of elimination. Okay, and that's such an important strategy. And people say, well, duh, Tom, we've heard that since third grade. But students often think they're supposed to just know the right answers on the SAT or ACT. That's not true. What you're supposed to do is go to the choices and get rid of the ones you know it's not. So process of elimination works well here because many of the choices just don't make any sense. So, and quickly you read some out loud. One reason that an insect can walk on walls while a human cannot is that the mass of its tiny body is far lower than humans. Well, that's out. That's what we've been talking about because you're comparing the mass to humans, and there's no apostrophe, so it's not human's body. You're just comparing mass to a person. So that's out. And then is far lower than that of a human's body. And that's perfect. Okay. But even if you weren't sure, which I don't think I would have been sure, I would have gone to the next choice. One reason an insect can walk on walls while a human cannot is that the mass of its tiny body is lower by far than humans. Well, I don't really like the by far. Plus, it's got the same problem as A. It's compare humans. It doesn't have apostrophe s. It's just humans, plural. So you're comparing the mass to plural humans. No good. And then is that the mass of its tiny body is far lower than a human. Same problem. Mass to a person. It's not plural anymore, but it's still a problem. And then E, the mass of its tiny body is far lower than is a human's body. Well, now you're comparing the mass to the human's body. You want to compare mass to mass. So only choice B is correct. That was a pretty tough question, guys. So I'm happy that a lot of you got that question correct. Okay, we are going to have to wrap up in a couple of minutes. And there's a few more things I want to get to. So let me skip a couple of questions here, and then we can do one or two more after. But the question I get from students is, okay, this class was helpful. What's the next step? Well, here's one smart next step. For any of you who are taking the April or June ACT, we do have an 18-hour ACT class online. It actually starts tomorrow night. So you can see, Elliot, can you see this slide?
Actually, I can't. It went away again.
I'm just going to assume everyone can. Oh, you can't? Hold on.
I can't.
You can now, Elliot?
Yep, now it's back.
Okay, sorry guys. So again, if you're taking the April or June ACT, we have a class for you. It starts tomorrow night. It's 7 to 9 o'clock Eastern, okay? It's Mondays and Wednesdays. So we try to do it at a time that's convenient for as many people as possible. And it meets on 9 different nights. Now, if you can't make some of those nights, we do record the class so you can watch it on demand. Okay, it's a very interactive class. everybody gets to participate even more than they did today because we have a lot fewer students on. So it's a great value. Okay, for $400, you get 18 hours of class time. Okay, and we do have a promotional code, and that is 15 off. So if you put in the code 15 off in the promo code field, you will save $60. Okay, which is a nice savings. So then the class would actually cost $340. Okay, and um, Elliot, could you post the URL for that class? While Elliot posts the URL in the questions area, let me just go to the class, everyone, so you can see it. So it's very simple. If you go to methodtestprep.com, okay, and you see here it says live online classes, click on learn more, okay, and you can see right here the ACT class. You click on more info, and you can get all the information about the class right here. You can then register by just clicking the orange button. Okay, and you can fill out the fields, and then the promo code, you type in 15 off, and when you hit apply promo code, you're going to see that now the cost of the class is $60 less. So I hope that was, I hope I went through that clearly enough. You just go to methodtestprep.com, live online classes, okay? And then you can get to the class there. And thanks, Elliot has posted that link. Okay, now for those of you who are not taking the ACT, for those of you who are maybe just going to take the SAT, and I do recommend that every student takes both tests once. If you're taking the May or June SAT, we do have an 18-hour SAT class as well. And for those of you who have shopped around, looked at other classes, you'll notice that this class is a lot less expensive than some other classes out there and gives you a lot of hours of class time. So this class, Elliot, can you see the slide?
Yes.
Okay, sorry to keep asking, guys. I just want to, obviously, I don't want to waste anybody's time if they can't see the slide. So the class, again, is 7 to 9 Eastern. Now, this class is Tuesdays and Thursdays, and it starts on April 3rd. So it starts in a couple of weeks, and it leads right up to the May SAT. You can see that the last class is on May 1st. So, of course, we do that with both the ACT class and the SAT class, is the classes lead right up to the exam. And the class it's a great value. Again, $400 for 18 hours of class time. And if you use the promo code, you will save $60. Okay? And Elliot, if you don't mind, just post that class as well. Okay, and then we do have another option for people who those days and times don't work for them. So we've recorded some of our best classes, some of our best mini classes, I should say. So these classes are 90 minutes long, okay, and they tackle one part of the SAT or ACT. So for this one, ACT class recordings, we have one for English, one for math, one for reading, one for science, okay, and each class is $35. And what's nice about these recordings is they're available on demand. You can watch it whenever is most convenient for you, a Saturday, a Sunday, weeknight, whatever. So a lot of people try out one of the classes, and then if they find the class helpful, then they watch a couple more. We do offer the last class for free to people who pay for all of them. So each class is $35, but you will save you save $25 by buying all 5. So just to make sure I'm being clear where those are, you go to live online classes again, scroll down, and you're going to see SAT on-demand classes, ACT on-demand classes. So if you click on more info for ACT, you'll have access to all the information right there. Okay, go back. And then I just listed here everybody for the SAT, and you guys understand. Although I should point out that on the SAT we do have an advanced math class. Okay, so perfect for students. If you were on tonight and you felt like the class was helpful, but it wasn't challenging enough, then this SAT advanced math class would be perfect for you. Again, it's a great deal, a great bargain, $35, and you get an hour and a half online recording. Um, and people who have purchased that recording have given us feedback. It's been very helpful. Okay. Okay, I do want to address, and then I'll wrap up here. I know everyone's been on for a long time. I appreciate you guys staying on. I want to talk about the changes to the SAT real quick. For any of you who maybe have younger siblings, or maybe you yourself are a ninth grader, these changes are not a big deal. Okay, you can read my article here. Let me see if I can quickly. Um, Elliot, would you mind trying to get this? If you click on our blog, actually, you know what? I'll just do it real quick. I think a lot of you guys might be interested in reading this article. Um, so let me post this link in the questions area, the chat area. So in case any of you want to go to that article, okay? Whoops, I gotta do that again. And what I do is I go through what the changes to the SAT mean for students. And the good news is they don't mean very much. They mean you have to still learn the same math, reading, and writing strategies and techniques. Of course, there will be some changes, and we'll address those, down the road. Right now, the test is not going to change for the next 2 years at least. Okay, so so any students who have any anxiety or worried about the changes to the SAT, I want you to know that we will have you covered. We'll go over the changes, but it's not going to be as big a deal as right now it seems. Okay, so we're actually going to stop there, everyone. I've gone over the time. I appreciate everybody being on. I hope you found this class helpful. If you did, please spread the word about our online classes. We have a lot of free classes that we do. We have a lot of different paid classes that give people a variety of options as far as price. So good luck with the rest of the year. Good luck on the SAT and ACT. And hopefully we'll see you back soon.